Welcome everybody. My name is Brian and this is my painting tutorial about the great Roberto Clemente and the painting that I did of him. Roberto was quite a ball player. He had a .317 lifetime batting average, 3,000 hits, 240 home runs, 1,305 RBIs, 15-time All-Star player, 2-time World Series champion, 4-time batting champion, 12-time Gold Glove award winner, Marine Corps Reserves, and he was a humanitarian who gave his life helping the victims of an earthquake in Nicaragua, so I just had to paint the guy. Plus, I'm a big baseball fan. So, getting right into it, I'm painting here with oil, and right away I'm establishing the brights. I toned the canvas in sort of a burnt umber, burnt sienna. I drew this in pencil and went over the pencil with Sharpie. So I fussed around with the pencil until I got it right. Then I sort of made it more permanent with Sharpie. And the reason I'm doing that these days is so that as I'm painting, I don't lose the form. I always see the underdrawing thanks to the Sharpie. Sometimes it's annoying because then I keep seeing the Sharpie and I have to give many layers of paint to paint over the Sharpie, but it really serves a great purpose. So here I'm painting his jersey white. I know from what my teachers told me I should be painting the background first, but sometimes I get excited about the subject matter and I just start painting the subject when I should be painting the background. But nonetheless, I am establishing the brights, and I'm trying to remember that there's some sunlight hitting that shirt. Okay, now reason has kicked in, and I'm painting the background. Why do I want to paint the background first? So that I can accurately judge the shades or the values, the shades of the subject. Right now, that brown background can be helpful, but it can also be distracting. So I need to eliminate the background. My teacher, Mr. Walt Bardman, always said, Brian, you gotta wipe out the background, especially if the canvas were white. If the canvas was white, he would tell me, get rid of all that white. I did learn from him to tone the background. So this burnt sienna, burnt umber tone is great. Okay, so now we're in full speed, eliminating the distracting background. And okay, you see right there, I've just established my darks. So now I have my brightest brights established and my darkest darks. So everything else, every other shade is going to live somewhere between that black, if you will, and that white. Neither is fully black and neither is fully white. That dark is really a combination of the darkest paints I have on my palette. Later in this tutorial, you'll see my palette. But right now, that's like a purple, it's navy blue, it's mixed with a dark green. There's some burgundy. You can see I'm working in some alizarin crimson. That's like a dark maroonish red. I'm putting that in the blacks because I want my blacks to be colorful. And I want him to pop forward, so any chance I can to bring some warmth, some reds. Reds always present themselves. They catch your eye. I'm going to smuggle it in to what you would think is just plain black. Okay, so that's called smuggling reds. Oh, you see, I've snuck some red in there, making it pop. But right now, I want to establish contrast. I want Roberto Clemente to pop out of the canvas. And for that, I have to have a light background, and those shoulders have got to be dark, and they really got to pop forward. All the shades in between, I can worry about that later. You can see that you can probably tell that I'm painting from a seated position. That's due to I've been having issues with my flat feet, and they hurt. And I know that it's best to paint standing up. And for 10 years, I've been painting standing up. But this last year, I've been painting sitting down. And you can even see I'm resting my head on my left arm a bit, which is bad posture, and which is resulting now in possibly a pinched nerve in my neck. This painting I did over the summer. Now it's late fall, and I'm starting to feel the effects in my neck. So, word of caution, don't paint sitting down for too long. If you do, make sure you're in the right kind of a chair and your posture is excellent. Mine was not, as you can see. All right, I'm speeding things up here. I'm still establishing the darks. Now, his skin tone is not as dark as his sleeves, but relative to the sky in the background, his skin is a dark. So I'm going to generalize all of his skin as basically 1 or 2 shades of a dark medium. Later, I'll get to different shades. Okay, now it's green grass time. Yeah, I have a tube of green paint, but I had to mix it with some yellow. I want this to be a cheerful painting, if I can, and so I'm working in some sunlight yellow into that green. The yellow is going to present itself closer. You're going to see in a bit how I start to bring in sky blue into the green in the outfield. Right now I'm painting the infield grass. And I got to make sure that it's way lighter than the black sleeves of his arms. Otherwise, I'll lose contrast. So I've got to push the extremes, making sure that whatever is surrounding his dark sleeved arms is bright, and his arms appear dark. People don't just like Roberto Clemente, they love him. This is my second Roberto Clemente painting I have done, and when I share it on my social media, I get emails by old friends professing how much they love Roberto Clemente, and so he's very popular. So that's why I did a second painting of Roberto. Here you see in the outfield grass, and is that the wall? I'm still got a shade of green, but now blue is presenting itself. Blue falls back. Warm colors like orange, yellows, and reds, they pop forward usually. But cool colors like purples and blues and greens, especially the more blue it's got, will fall back. And you want to push depth in your paintings, at least I do. And so I'm smuggling in sky blue into my greens in the outfield. Now I'm working the outfield wall, and you would think, okay, things in the distance get lighter, but this outfield wall is much darker than the green grass. Well, that's partly because it's a vertical, and verticals usually don't catch as much sunlight as flat plains do when the sun is up and during daytime. So a vertical is going to be a shadowy figure. It still has the color green. It still has blue because it's in the distance. And I'm also going to make it darker than the sky so that we have depth. So that tree line is going to behave just like that outfield wall. And that it's going to be a vertical, it'll be a dark green, but it'll be a cool green because it's far away. It won't have like browns. I put some brown in the outfield wall a little bit. But the outfield wall nor the tree line can be as dark as Roberto's shoulders. Roberto's shoulders have got to pop forward. Dark things pop forward, light things fall back. Cool things fall back, warm pops forward, darks pop forward, and now I'm confused. But you get the point. Okay, it's baseball bat time. I wanted this painting to have some color, so I exaggerated the yellow in that tan bat, in that light tan bat. I also wanted to be reflecting a cheerful sun, a sun that's somewhere up in the sky, off camera. The beauty of oil painting is that if I make a color mistake, no problem, I can fix it. I can just paint right over it again. Even wet on wet, I don't have to wait for it to dry. I can wait for it to dry, and I can always correct my mistakes a few days later. but it's like a birthday cake. I'm just layering frosting over frosting. There you go. There's a layer of brighter tan on top of a mid-tone tan. And if I went too bright, too extreme, I just kind of fuss with the brush and it blends into the underpainting. And then they blend together. If I fuss too much, then I get mud. So I have to be careful there. That comes with experience. Oh, my first few paintings were very, very muddy. I also painted way too thick, way too soon in my early paintings. I still do, as you can see. I am painting rather thickly, prematurely, but at least I have tone to the painting, so I am layering on top of something. The rule of thumb is thick over thin. You want to start with thin paint in oil, and then gradually get thicker with the paint, layer upon layer. You might not see in the photo, but Roberto's head is casting a shadow on the thinner part of his bat. And so I'm trying to establish that with like a green shade, greenish gray. All right. So now I'm doing, I'm just kind of establishing order. I'm just filling in his shirt. These aren't big decisions. Sometimes I get tired of an area and decide to go somewhere else. It's not good to hyper-focus in one area too long. Okay, here's my palette, and you can see, well, you see the paints I got out there. I'm working the letters now, and those letters are going to be dark, so I want the gaps between the letters to appear bright. I'm going to exaggerate the brightness, so I'm really working like a sunny yellow with white. Because if you see in the photo there, the word pirates is in black letters. Yes, there's a gold trim around each letter, but when you squint, all you see are the black letters. So when you squint, you see the general colors and the general shades, and you lose nuances, and sometimes you want to just see the general. Okay, I'm working the trim around his shirt, trying to, I'm going to let those numbers and letters pop. But sometimes you got to work the background in order to focus on something. So now it's time for the letters. And they're really going to pop because I addressed their surroundings. I'm using a flatter brush that can get me sharper angles. Sometimes I dip the paint into some linseed oil to get it more runny, to really stretch the oil paint. So I can get smooth letters, smooth numbers. Also, that black letter T right there makes Roberto's left fist come forward by contrast. A lot of the credit goes to the photographer who took this picture and decided to share this picture, with his publication or whatever, because a lot of things went right when he took this picture. Meaning the lighting was good, there was contrast that told a story, that told just enough information. One strange thing about this photo is Roberto's really leaning one way too much, in my opinion. So when I drew him on the canvas, I straightened him out a little bit, so he's more vertical, instead of a leaning tower of Roberto. While I'm working the letter P of pirates over there, I gotta be mindful that that part of his chest is in the shadows and is catching less light. So at some point, that space in the letter P has got to go a shadier gray. Okay, now there's a little, now I'm putting some shadow under his fists, under his forearms. That will establish a 3 dimension. It will make his arms come forward in space. Shadows are not pure gray sometimes, but they're often colorful. And if I can remember to notice what color is lurking in the shadows, I'll try and exaggerate that to bring the painting to life. Okay, now I'm showing the camera that I'm using a smaller brush. It's time to work the face. So I'm using a mid-size, I think it's a round brush. The base tone of his face is a medium dark, but now I'm putting brighter skin tones on top of darker skin tones. They call this modeling. It's almost like you're working a clay sculpture of someone's face in this example. I mean, I'm literally putting on globs of paint on top of paint. It's like I'm sculpting. I'm trying to guess and get every square inch of his face the right color and shade, but I get it wrong a lot. And so then I don't worry, because I know I can blend it and I can paint over it. So right now I'm just establishing the colors and shades on the planes of his face. Trying to think about what the light is doing on his face, and trying to be consistent in my representation of the behavior of light. I'm trying to ignore his eyes, nose, and mouth and think of his face as basically just like a brown football. And if it's a football, it would be with no stitches, then it would be much easier to see what the light is doing. Once I understand what the light is doing to his head, I will show the same effect on his nose, his lips, his ears, his knuckles on his hands. So I'm basically thinking about what the sun is, where the sun is and how it's behaving. I've switched to a smaller brush here, I think. And now I'm bringing in brights. His face is also reflecting the sky. So I'm putting sky blue in his skin. Okay, it's time to work the bill of the hat. This is just sort of, this doesn't take a lot of thinking. I just see right now a general green shade. I'm popping it in. Kind of matches the wall, the outfield wall. Later, I'll get the varying degrees of green and the different shadows. But this is called the local color. They call it the local color. I see green, I pour it out of the tube, I just put it on there. All right, now I got a dry brush and a rag. I'm gonna take this messy looking face and I'm gonna do some blending with a dry brush. As I do this, the brush gets loaded up with paint and I have to wipe it on that rag there. All right. Some painters don't do this. I do it because I make mistakes as I go. I'm not that good, so I have to, cover my tracks and compensate for bad judgment, and blend it together, and then try again, and blend it and try again. So I like the dry brush blending method. And it's cool. It's like I'm painting and sculpting with paint that's already on his face. If I make a mistake, I can grab another brush, put some more strokes of paint down, and then blend that. At this point, I'm probably thinking, okay, there's not much more I can do today. I'm going to let this dry for 3 days and I'll come back to it. Then I'll really be able to correct my mistakes. I'll really be able to get the shades and the colors correct because it's so much easier to work wet on dry. So I can't say for sure, but this might be a couple days later. Again, I'm really happy that I've discovered the using the Sharpie technique. I know it's not a traditional painting method, and they didn't do this in the Renaissance age, but because they didn't have Sharpies. I don't know if you know that, but they didn't have Sharpies. No, but man, I like the Sharpie technique because all that blending I just did, I would have messed up the under drawing, and I would have lost form. But because I can still see the Sharpie, I've kept the form of the face. It gives me the freedom to make mistakes and keep reworking it until I get it. Okay, here I'm introducing the color red. Sometimes I go a long time and I forget to put in red, and when I do, it really brings the person to life. Red is, it's the blood that's flowing through the skin, and so this guy is now coming to life because I'm bringing red into his flesh. Before he looked a little sickly, greenish brown, but now we got life. Red usually populates the cheeks, the ball of the nose, the lips, obviously, the chin, top of the chin a little bit, and the ears. And so I've got to always remember, even if I don't see it in the reference photo, I've got to remember that red lives in the chins, right, the cheeks, the ball of the nose, the mouth, sometimes the brow, corners of the eyes. All right, here I'm bringing in brights, I'm bringing in reflections of the sky. So although Roberto has, butterscotchy brown skin, if he's outdoors and there's a blue sky, then he's going to be reflecting sky blue in the highlights. And that includes the whites of his eyes, which are never going to be pure white. I might start at pure white. Well, not pure white, but I might start as something really bright and then put shadows in the eyes as well. Okay, the ball of the nose will also have a little shiny reflection usually. Muscles in the brow are going to have high parts that reflect the sky. I wish I had the reference photo off to the side so you could see what I'm looking at. but I'm kind of new to doing this whole, video painting tutorial thing. If you think these paint strokes are mucking up the painting, go ahead and squint. Almost close your eyes. And then these bright brush strokes will make more sense to you. They'll look like natural highlights and reflections off of the face. Soon I will blend them, and it will all make sense. But squinting, I probably have wrinkles in my eyes due to all the squinting I do when I paint. So that's a wet brush, but I can still blend with it and sort of scoot the paint strokes, scoot the paint around until I like it. I also want to blur edges, okay, and cover up the evidence of Sharpie. All right, and sometimes I have to put the brush down, stand up, and take a look at the big picture. I do a lot of squinting to judge the shades, the values, but I have to look at the big picture and see, do some problem solving. Did I make any big blunders? Right? I have to take it all in. Sometimes get up, get a cup of coffee, and come back. All right, it's time to put some brights on the hands. Okay? I see like a butterscotchy shade of tannish brown while reflecting some sky blue. But now I get a smaller brush and I'm going to push the contrast by putting in the darks in between his fingers, under his thumb, under his hands. That's really going to make things pop three-dimensional. And sometimes as the painter, I'll decide to not pay attention to the hands of a subject. But in this case, his hands look very powerful. This guy, he had 3,000 hits, 240 home runs. So I'm going to really show off the strength of his grip in his arms. If I want to do that, I'm going to crank up contrast. I'm going to exaggerate some darks and brighten the brights. And again, I have to remember to get up and look at the painting from across the room, squint. If the painting disappears, if the contrast disappears, then I have to darken my darks and brighten my brights. And so I'm thankful when hunger hits me and it's time for me to go get a bite to eat or to go get a drink of something. Because when I return to the painting, I see it from across the room and I suddenly realize, oh my gosh, his hands are disappearing. I've got to darken the darks around them. Okay, switching brushes here to put some highlights back on his fingers. So it's a game of constantly adjusting the brights and the darks for me. Also, sometimes the brights will dry darker. And so I'll have to put another layer of brights in. And sometimes the darks will dry lighter. And so I'll have to reinstate the darks. So it's like a tug of war match. All the while, be mindful of what color you're looking at. So you might be really good at getting the darks and the brights in, but if you're not mindful of the colors you're seeing, your painting could be drabby and boring. And then you might as well just paint a black and white painting, a monochromatic. Yep. I was wondering when I was going to fix that nose. His nostrils, although we don't want them as dark as his eyes, we still want to know he's breathing, so we want to give him some nostril holes there, some breathing holes. And so we'll darken them a little, but I'll check him against the darks of his eyes to make sure that his eyes have more contrast. We want to be drawn in by his eyes, not his nostrils. He does have powerful eyebrows, so I'm going to darken them up, but not too much. That could be scary. Sometimes I will realize that I have to darken edges. And sometimes I need to soften edges. In this case, around his face, I want you looking at his face, I'm going to have darker edges in contrast to the bright sky. But maybe on his shoulders, I'll soften those edges. I want to direct the eye of the viewer to the important places and not let the viewer get lost looking at the wrong thing. And that, for me, is contrast. That means contrast. Some artists are all about color. They want to dazzle you with color. And I envy those artists because they see colors that I don't. Sometimes I'll try and exaggerate the colors I see just to get some of the magic that other artists have, but it's usually better that I paint what I see. But I do see contrast. Right there. I had to darken under his chin to make his head pop forward a little bit more. I'll probably soften that shadow under his neck so it's not distracting and not competing with the darks in his eyes. And after some work off camera, this might even be a couple days later, it's time to show a transition of light and shadow under that bill. light is always moving, so therefore so are shadows, and usually things present themselves gradually, so the left side of the bill is going to be darker. The green is going to pick up some burnt sienna, some burnt umber maybe, a warmer brown. It's going to move across the hat and fade into the light. Yeah, this is definitely a couple days later, because you can see on his face it's less shiny. That means the oil paint has dried. And you see all these different fussy brush strokes. A lot of it is guesswork. I'm guessing the values, and I'm guessing the colors. But I like the way it's optically blended. Okay. Now I'm going in for the crown jewel, and those are the eyes of a portrait. Really want them to dazzle you and to draw you in, so I'm going to increase the dark of the pupil and brighten the brights. We'll see if I do that. More contrast on the edges of his head, his forehead, showing a little bit of his hair under that hat. Going to darken a little bit in the depths of his ear. And by doing that, if you squint, the whole of his face pops forward and looks more three-dimensional. We've got more depth now. There's distance and up close because of contrast. It's time for the dazzling highlights on the eyes. You know, if I fuss too much with the brush, I'll make a mess and have to wipe it away and try again. And I probably ran out of memory on my phone, so that was it. Here's the finished product, folks. I hope you like it. Somebody did, because they bought it on eBay from my eBay store. And I usually put my paintings up on my eBay store. Check it out, Brian Coyne, Coyne. And take a look, see if I have more baseball players up there. I also do rock stars. And I attach a wire on the back so you can hang it with or without a frame. I paint the edges black so it looks good on the wall without a frame. But I usually pick canvases of standard sizes, so you can buy a ready-made frame for very cheap. But there's Roberto, Pittsburgh Pirates, hero. And thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and check out my eBay store for more baseball paintings. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.